Hey everyone, what's up? This is Uri for Guerrilla Poker, and last video we covered OTB Red Baron, and I promised you guys there would be another really cool thing to cover. This is one of the best months to cover in recent history. So really excited, because I was scrolling through 2+2, and you see Omaha, then someone posts this pic. This is a picture of a berry and of a Pokemon. Hopefully you guys know who these two guys are. And we have heads up between LLinusLLove and BERRI SWEET. So to give some background for those of you who don't know these players, LLinusLLove is currently, as far as I know, considered the 6 max and heads up greatest online player. You know, maybe debatably top 3 in one of the formats and not top 1, but very extremely good player. He's been on top of the game for quite a few years. Some people say he dethroned OTB Red Baron. I like to think OTB stepped aside for his own reasons. Be that as it may, that's LLinusLLove. Everyone knows LLinusLLove. BERRI SWEET, I think one of the best, if not the best, pot limit Omaha players in the world. And over the past few years, he's been challenging specialists in other games to heads-up matches. 5-card Omaha, 6-card Omaha. I think he was playing stud and triple draw, all sorts of games. As far as I know, he's been doing really, really well, despite these not being in his main games. And he's a very, timing, read-based, exploitative player. A lot of his hands in Hold'em are not theoretically sound, but he still does very, very well. So, we're seeing these two guys lock horns. Very, very exciting. Linus is a complete beast, so BERRI as well. So we're going to see stuff that we don't usually see in hands. Okay, so hand number 1, 126 big blinds deep effective. Heads up, Linus raises to 245. I don't know why these guys are only playing 5100. Both can, of course, play a lot higher. And there is a decent chance when you see this that the game is cross-booked. So, for example, this might actually be a 500-1000 game or even bigger. It's really tough to tell. Very often, when you have these matches, people agree on a side to bet on the outcome of the match. In big blinds, very often the players themselves or their friends are betting. So this is a much bigger game than it seems. Don't be off-put by it's only $10,000. Some of you guys are too hot for $10,000 to matter. So Linus raises, BERRI calls. We get 6-3-8 rainbow board. Very dynamic board. I'd say this is one of those boards where any hand has something. You always have at least overcards or a draw or something. So because of that reason, these boards tend not to get bet too small, because if you bet small, your opponent, just every hand almost in his range has good qualities to continue. So here BERRI checks, Linus bets, it's roughly 66% pot, and BERRI check raises, Linus calls. Check raising ranges, something we talk about in a check raising course on the Guerrilla Poker website. You can imagine, heads up value threshold is going to start, whether it's ace-8, king-8, or 2-pair, depends what you consider value. And then, plenty of bluffs to choose from on a board like this. 3 of clubs turn, relatively neutral turn. I think BERRI SWEET should be check-raising a few 3s, not too many. Linus should be c-betting. It's a big c-bet size, so not every 3 is in his range. He probably c-bets some decent amount of the 3s. So kind of hits both players. Old school check raising ranges, if it were just sets in 2 pairs, this might be a bit of an action freezer, but modern check raising ranges have, people just have trips more here. So yeah, BERRI keeps betting. Linus calls, Queen of Diamonds river, BERRI shoves for a small overbet. Here I'd expect his range to be, either a busted draw or trips plus probably. I don't think he can go worse than trips here for this line. Worse than trips, like you might say Queen 8. I don't think he even gets here with Queen 8. Ace 8 is not good enough, so it has to be trips or better for BERRI to stack off. Linus calls, and we're going to see a showdown from the 2 sickos. BERRI has a both, very standardly played, nothing special about the hand. Flop a set, check raise, bet. Some people will always check when they turn a boat. It's like a very human tendency because you feel invulnerable. You have a boat, so you check. But yeah, in theory, you're supposed to mix. You don't always check and you don't always bet. So this is fine. The river, of course, fine. And think Linus's hand is interesting to talk about. When we look here, so c-bet and call the check raise are both very straightforward. When Berry fires the turn, Linus does have sort of a decision to make, like Jack 8 is not doing particularly well at this point. I could see Jack 8 being kind of a mixed fold on the turn. But that being said, you always look at your pairs and you look at the kicker. So Jack 8 is a lot better than 7-8 or 8-5 or 8-4 or 8-9 or 8-10, because all of those, when they improve on the river, villain will sometimes have a straight, and also they block some of Berry's bluffs. They block straight draws. So Jack 8 is one of the better 8s, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is a pure turn call. Then Queen of Diamonds river, Berry shoves, and here again, Linus is going to have a bunch of bluff catchers to decide whether or not to call with. Now here a bluff catcher might be pocket 9s, maybe even pocket kings is just a bluff catcher, I'm not sure. Probably. Maybe Berry somehow rivers a queen and shoves it, but I'm not sure that's really something that happens enough. So yeah, 9s, 10s, jacks, maybe kings, aces are bluff catchers, debatably, or like queen x of clubs, and every 8, of course, in his range. And here we really want to think about the removal effects. The way these kind of spots work is that when you don't beat value bets, whether or not your hand is a good call completely depends on blockers. And here when you think of something like Jack 8 compared to pocket 10s, or compared to 10-8, maybe even compared to pocket kings, Jack 8 looks pretty good, because the Jack is not in Berry's bluffing range, and the 8 blocks some of Berry's value range, right? You remove hands like 8-3 and pocket 8s. So this is actually, it looks like a fairly good bluff catcher. That doesn't mean Linus should always call it. Sometimes, there's Jack 8, but there's like 6-8 and Queen 8 and King 8 and Ace 8 and potentially aces and kings, like I said, even something like 8-deuce. I don't think this is necessarily a mandatory call, but it looks pretty standard. I think it's definitely fine at some frequency. And in a way, nothing special happens in this hand. It's kind of a surface level. Non-surface level, of course, maybe these guys are, they're trying to poke holes into each other's games. And maybe something here was premeditated. But really the hand just looks normal. Like, not too interesting. Next hand, Berry already has 320 big blinds, so doing well. Berry raises to 2.5x, Linus 3 bets, Berry 4 bets, and Linus calls. We get a 4-5-6 two-tone board. Now, in terms of who is this board good or bad for, whenever you look at a board in a 4-bet pot, you always want to think of the 4-betters' offsuit hands. If all the offsuit hands that 4-bet missed, 4-better has to be a bit careful. He can't just c-bet everything. While once they start hitting, it's very, very different, and he gets to run the caller over a bit. So, what do I mean? If this had been 4-6 ace, this is a very good board for Berry. Same for 4-6 king, possibly 4-6 queen. Like, all the high cards are very often in the 4-bet range. But once there is no high card there, Berry's going to play a lot more passively. And that's kind of what we see here. So Linus checks, Berry checks. We get the 8 of clubs turn. So it looks like 4 to a straight is scary, but none of the players have a 7 very often. Berry, of course, not very often. And Linus, he could have 7s, 6-7 suited, Ace-7 suited, those kind of hands, but those are not the bulk of his range. The bulk of his range is still higher cards. And, you don't 3-bet the low pairs that often to begin with. So Linus bets small. This could presumably be a bunch of hands. Like the small bet very often on a 4-card low board is just designed to deny equity from Berry's overcards. So Linus could be doing this with something like Ace-4, or pocket 9s, which are a similar hand strength if you think about it, just to make Berry have a tough decision with something like Ace-King, Ace-Queen. So, yeah, Linus bets, Berry calls, 3 of clubs river, so 4 to a straight again, but like I said, no one's going to have a deuce very often. No one's going to have a 7 very often. So it's really, even though it looks like this super dynamic board, on the river Linus checks, Berry shoves, and Linus calls. But once Linus checks, straights and sets are kind of out of the question. Linus looks like he has a give up or a 1-pair hand for the most part. And Berry's going to have, on the river some 2 overcard hands and some overpairs. And that's the range interplay that you're going to see. Berry's going to try to balance this range of, shoving overpair plus. I'm not sure where the threshold is. Is it 10s or something else? Along with bluffs, whether they're like King Jack of Spades or Ace King of Spades. Let me think, which other bluffs could you have? Just 2 overcards you call the turn bet with. So, something with a 9. Ace 9 makes a lot of sense. King 9. 4-bet bluff ranges are kind of all over the place, so it's tough to put him on a specific combo unless it's Ace King. But Linus checks, Berry shoves, Linus calls, and we'll see the hands. Berry had pocket aces, so, pre-flop very obvious. Flop checkback is, like I said, because the board is 3 low cards, you can't just bet aces, kings, queens, and check back over cards. So aces is a really nice hand to play the check back roll, and then, rest of the hand. Very standard from Berry in a way. Of course, if you're not sharp, you might miss the river value bet because you're scared of the board, but really in a 4-bet pot you shouldn't be. When we look at Linus's hand, 3-bet makes sense, definitely not folding to the 4-bet. This is sometimes a 5-bet bluff. And then turn bet, like I said, just equity denial, always checks the river after doing that. And then facing the shove, he just has a bluff catching decision. So I imagine this should just be mixed. I don't really have a good answer. What should you do with ace 5? I think Berry might bluff his ace high some of the time, so I'm not particularly excited about having the ace as a kicker. It's just one of those spots where you're supposed to kind of call, sometimes fold, sometimes. Linus probably is actually randomizing the spot, if I had to guess. So actually what we see here is the next hand Berry actually has 660 big blinds, so we definitely missed some stuff in between, but this has got to be a wild match. If I were Linus, I would be very tilted at being down, like we said, since this is cross-booked, almost for sure. He's down probably $200,000 to $500,000 on this table. But I'm sure Linus has no nerves of steel. He can take it. We'll make this the last hand, but there are many, many more. If you guys are enjoying this match, and even if you're not, I probably have to keep covering it because I enjoy it too much. But yeah, so last hand, Berry raises, Linus 3 bets, Berry calls. Here the 3 bets around 4x. I think as you get deeper, Linus has always been one to start 3 betting smaller and smaller. I haven't personally looked too much into why, but I know that's how he plays. So, Queen 9-8 two-tone board. This board is much... I'm not sure, but I have a feeling this board is fairly good for the guy calling the 3-bet. Just due to the fact that the Jack-10 offsuit is in his range, heads up, like every combo. So, reasonable board for Linus to have a wide checking range on. Berry stabs small. Small stabs, of course, could be anything. Linus calls. 4 of diamonds turn, so 2 flush draws. Linus checks. At this point, Berry stabs big, so now he has a polarized range. Probably top pair or better, betting at this point for value. Plus, there are infinite bluffs to choose from. River 5, so board breaks out. Linus checks. Berry shoves for a bit over pot, even though it looks like 62,000. And Linus calls in a showdown with Berry having flop the nuts, so yeah, nothing to say about. I mean, you can't say anything about someone's play when he flops the nuts in position and goes bet shove. There's not much to it. Linus has ace 9 suited. I think more interesting hand to look at. So 3-bet looks good. Calling the c-bet is very obvious, and I think calling the turn bet is also probably very obvious. I think this hand is just too strong at that point. I mean, I think you can start folding this on the turn. And the real question, again, happens on the river. Just like in the previous hands, Linus gets to the river with a bluff catcher, with, somewhat reasonable removal effects. It's not clear, are they good or are they bad? They look above average, but lots of hands are going to have these effects. So in the end, it's really tough to say. This is a hand that probably should call sometimes and fold sometimes. I imagine Linus should call every queen, and then, is ace-9 better than 10-9, or better than jack-9? Is it better than 10s? I'm personally not sure. Not a huge difference. So you guys might see Linus calling all these hands and losing, but for all we know, he just randomized the call at the correct frequency because, best player in the world, debatably. So yeah, nothing too special happening except Linus getting crushed so far. But yeah, we'll see how it continues. That's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.